Hi everyone, this is Brianna Vollmer and this is EDL 850 Module 12's case study, Copyright and the Computer. First, I'm going to start with some objectives for today for copyright and the computer. First, I'm going to summarize the case and then report any legal or ethical issues with the case. I'll synthesize what has happened and the facts. I'll review and prioritize the information. I'll identify options and possible consequences to find a solution to the case study. I'll answer questions specific to this case study that have been provided. I'll evaluate my options and then choose the best solution for a positive outcome. Let's start with the case summary. The case study, Copyright in the Computer, is summarized by: this case takes place at St. Regis School, a rural school located 25 miles from a large city that serves grades K through 8. Teachers requested that Mrs. Lynn, the library media specialist, make copies of newly purchased software programs so that programs could be installed on computers in all classrooms for all students to use. Mrs. Brandon, a new teacher to the building, receives a copy of the copied programs and is concerned with copyright violations. She relays her knowledge of the copied programs to her principal, Mr. Sample. Mr. Sample approaches Mrs. Lynn to inform her of copyright violations, and her reaction is that she is saving the school money. She also states that the PTA president, Mrs. Evans, helped her make the copies of the software. Let's talk more about what St. Regis School looks like. It's located 25 miles from a large city, serves students in grades K through 8, student population of around 420 students. There are 2 teachers per grade level, 2 special education teachers, a library and media specialist, and computer laboratory teacher. Some financial support for St. Regis. There's meager state allocations, 2 major fundraising efforts each year, candy and gift wrap sales, and parent-sponsored spring fling race and activities. The school's annual budget provides basic materials for teachers with a small extra amount dedicated to purchasing either computers or new software for classrooms. Who's involved with this case? Mr. Keith Sample is the principal of St. Regis School for the past 3 years. Mrs. Evans is the PTA president. Mrs. Lynn is the library media specialist and computer lab teacher. Mrs. Williams is an experienced 3rd grade teacher and spent her entire career at St. Regis. Mrs. Brandon is a new 3rd grade teacher to the building, and then there are lots of building teachers involved. What are the roles of each individual? First, let's start with Mrs. Lynn. She initially distributes a form for teachers to request software programs for use in classrooms. The software is installed and properly used for 4 months. Despite copyright restrictions, she makes copies of computer programs on the flash drives to distribute to teachers. When Mr. Sample questions Mrs. Lynn about the copied software, she states, "Making multiple copies of the new programs makes the technology available to so many more teachers and students. Our parents worked hard to earn that money, and I've been told that many teachers want to have these programs copied and installed on their classroom computers." The group of teachers. They approach Mrs. Lynn with an idea to make copies of purchased software to install on individual students' computers. Mrs. Williams is a 3rd grade teacher who receives copied programs that are available to all teachers, and she was pretty excited about it. Mrs. Brandon tells Mrs. Lynn that she is concerned about copyright restrictions after receiving the copies of the computer programs, also tells Mrs. Lynn that teachers were not allowed to make multiple copies. She approaches Mr. Sample with the information of the copied software programs. She seems to be very informed of copyright laws and restrictions. She goes through the proper channels of ordering programs and refuses the copies that were given to her by Mrs. Lynn. The PTA president is Mrs. Evans. She helped Mrs. Lynn copy computer software to distribute to teachers at St. Regis. She believes that she's helping the school save money by copying these programs. And Mr. Sample, the principal, was informed of copies of computer software being made by Mrs. Lynn and the PTA president, was given specifics of which programs were made and to whom they were distributed, confronted Mrs. Lynn about the copied programs and their distribution, makes Mrs. Lynn aware that what she is doing is a violation of copyright and will mean serious consequences for the school and the school district if she is discovered by the publisher, states that he will collect all copies and that Mrs. Lynn is to stop making others. So what has happened so far? A group of teachers approaches Mrs. Lynn about making copies of purchased computer software programs to distribute to all teachers to use on independent student computers. Upon receiving copies of the copied software, Mrs. Brandon is concerned about copyright violations and relays the information to her principal, Mr. Sample. Mr. Sample informs Mrs. Lynn that she is to hand over copied programs and immediately stop further copying of computer software programs. Mrs. Lynn believes that she is saving the school money by making copies of the programs. My synthesis: after teachers at St. Regis School request that copies be made of purchased computer software, the media specialist makes the copies and distributes them to teachers in the building. Let's move on to what issues we have at hand. There are a lot of them. There have been copyright violations by many teachers and stakeholders at St. Regis School. Mr. Sample is an outsider of St. Regis that wants to maintain his supporters and is still moving towards what his vision is of the school. So I believe that he doesn't have a lot of policies implemented thus far. There clearly has been a lack of information and education about copyright, and are no clear policies implemented within the staff of St. Regis. There's tension that has not been addressed between Mrs. Brandon and Mrs. Lynn. There's a little bit of conflict there in some of the things Mrs. Lynn has said about her. Mrs. Lynn does not feel as if she is in the wrong and has almost threatened Mr. Sample with calling PTA officers. She also does not listen to Mr. Sample's instructions about the copies that were made. Although the PTA is passionate about students at St. Regis School, they are not adhering to copyright laws. Some issues I foresee in the future happening: further copyright violation if nothing's done, repercussions from copyright violations, animosity amongst the staff, loss of employees. So if Mrs. Brandon feels like she's not doing what she's supposed to be doing, she could potentially leave the school. Mr. Sample cannot implement his vision if he cannot implement and enforce policies about copyright. The school PTA is facilitating copyright violations. Some case facts. Copyright laws have clearly been violated. Multiple teachers have violated copyright laws by copying the programs and using the programs or taking the copies. The PTA has helped to violate copyright laws. Teachers are aware that their actions are violating copyright laws, but continue to make and distribute the programs. Who does this affect? I believe that this affects the entire school community as a whole, which includes students, teachers, stakeholders, Mr. Sample, the principal, Mrs. Lynn, the one that made the copies, the group of teachers who initiated the idea of copying programs, Mrs. Brandon, who knows that it's wrong, the Board of Education, the superintendent, and then the entire PTA organization as a whole. Some unknown information. We do not know if there's a school or district policy about copyright. It doesn't say anything about that. We do not know if there has been copyright training opportunities for all teachers, staff, parents, students, and organizations that volunteer or help with St. Regis School. We do not know if there's been a breach of contract by any teacher that has accepted copied programs, because we don't know if there's any type of policy implemented. We do not know if there's been a breach of contract with Mrs. Lynn, Mrs. Evans, or the group of teachers that proposed the copyright infringement idea. We don't know information from the software itself or what the copyright policy is. Does the district have a technology staff that is in charge of the technology needs of the school? So did Mrs. Lynn and the other teachers go against what the technology staff says that they're supposed to be doing? Who needs to know about what's happening? The superintendent certainly needs to know, the Board of Education needs to know, and then the other members of the PTA organization also need to know. Let's prioritize the information. The action of many could be very damaging to the entire school community and to many stakeholders involved within the school. Penalties could include payment of the amounts of damages and profits, payment of damages of each violation, and payment of attorney fees and court costs, or even jail time. Who is involved is a very important piece of the puzzle to take action for this case study. First, who made the copies of the software is important. Second, who accepted and is currently using the copies. And third, who refused to accept the copies is important as well. I do believe I know enough about this case study to proceed with the decision. Some legal issues that are at hand. There's a clear violation of the 1976 U.S. Copyright Act by St. Regis School, by multiple teachers, and these copyright violations were facilitated by the PTA. Mrs. Lynn has also refused to comply with Mr. Sample's orders, which could be a breach of contract or against school policy. Some ethical issues at hand. Mrs. Lynn is upset with Mrs. Brandon about her objection to the copied materials. Mrs. Lynn has been informed by multiple sources that she has violated copyright law and is still defending her actions. Mrs. Lynn threatened Mr. Sample with calling PTA officers to explain how much money she's saving. I believe that this has an undertone of her throwing her weight around, for lack of a better term. The PTA wants to save money through making copies of computer software rather than just purchasing it. Harm. Who's been harmed in this situation? I believe Mrs. Brandon has been put into harm's way legally and emotionally. She knows exactly what she's supposed to be doing and not doing, and these teachers are putting her in harm's way by being a part of their school staff. The entire staff, district, and PTA has been put in harm's way legally by their actions. No one has been harmed physically. The relationship of the PTA and the school has been damaged, I believe, because of some of the PTA's actions and just the relationship that is there. Let's talk about the options that we have. I have 5 options. The first option is to take no action at all and continue to allow the copied software programs to circulate and be used. No disciplinary action is taken on the involved parties. The second option is to inform the superintendent and Board of Education of the copyright violation and solicit input about actions to be taken. Option 3 is to collect all material and ensure that all programs are removed from all school-issued devices. Take no action with the teachers and PTA that were involved with the copyright infringement. Option 4 is to collect all material and ensure that all programs were removed from all school-issued devices that have been illegally obtained. Mrs. Lynn is fired for copyright infringement. The teachers who had the idea of copying the material and accepted and used the programs would be formally written up or suspended and forced to attend copyright training before returning to work if they were kept on. I would strongly suggest that the PTA president be removed from her position. And option 5 would be to inform the superintendent and school board of the situation, collect all material, and ensure that all programs were removed from all school-issued devices that have been illegally obtained. Mrs. Lynn would be required to immediately attend copyright training before returning to work. Disciplinary action would be taken if she violated any school or board policies. I would hold a meeting as a staff to discuss the copyright issues immediately. Required training would be attended by all teachers as soon as possible. A school policy would be implemented and required training would be conducted each year for all staff. I would attend the next PTA meeting and discuss with them the copyright violations and discuss PTA members attending future training on copyright. Some consequences of those options. Option 1, continue to be in violation of copyright laws and face a lawsuit from the publisher. Students and adults will consequently be unsuccessful. Staff members and the PTA would believe that they can continue to do what they wish and continue to copy programs. Some staff would feel betrayed that you're going against their ethics. I could personally lose my job, or teachers may leave the school district. Option 2, no real action is taken. Our school will still be facing a lawsuit and there has been no solution to the problem. Option 3, our school will still be facing a lawsuit. I am not educating teachers about copyright and holding them accountable for their actions, thus leaving the door open for future problems with copyright. Option 4, this option would negatively impact our school culture. A teacher would lose their job. I could create animosity amongst the PTA and myself. I could face issues if there were no policies in place that Mrs. Lynn has violated, and we fired her anyway. Option 5, our school could still be facing a copyright lawsuit, and the PTA may be upset about finances lost by not making these illegal copies. Let's evaluate my options. Option 1, this would certainly be the easiest option to pursue. I wouldn't have to do anything. This option could, however, create a great deal of problems legally and ethically, and would not be showing my true character in the best interest of my school and its students. Option 2, I would be gaining important opinions on what action should be taken, but there has not been a solution created or implemented, and we go back to square one. Option 3, this would ensure that the copied materials are no longer being circulated or being used. This option, however, does not allow me to educate those that are in violation of copyright. They're also not held accountable for their actions. Option 4, this is the most penalizing and harsh option. I do not believe that this option would align with my values or who I am as a leader. It is important that I offer opportunity to learn from mistakes, and this option would not allow the teachers involved to do so. Option 5, this option would allow me to offer opportunities for my school community to grow and learn. I would still be holding the teachers and PTA members accountable that violated copyright laws. It would also offer opportunity to educate our school community in the future, as well as evaluate necessary policies in place by the Board of Education, superintendent, and myself as school leaders. And my choice. As a school leader, I believe that the best choice for a positive outcome, given the circumstances, would be option 5. I would start by informing the superintendent and the Board of Education about what took place, and then I would also take some opinions and some help from them as well in this situation. I would hold a meeting for all teachers and volunteers that work for the school or PTA members at all. Together with the entire staff, we would collect and destroy all copied materials and remove them from computers and electronic devices. I would have a conference with Mrs. Lynn to discuss the violations. She would then be required to participate in copyright training before returning to work as a library media specialist. Further disciplinary action would be taken per board or school policy, given what the superintendent and the Board of Education said. Together with the superintendent, we would construct a school policy for guidelines in regards to copyright. Lastly, all staff would be required to participate in copyright training at our next staff meeting. Training before the beginning of the school year will be a new requirement at St. Regis School for all staff. PTA members will be strongly encouraged to attend copyright training with teachers at St. Regis when opportunities grant us the opportunity to do so. Yearly trainings will continue to be available and encouraged to attend by all PTA members. New ideas for fundraising would be entertained to ensure the proper channels are followed to obtain new computer software. The importance of my choice. My choice to destroy the programs that were copied, which violated copyright laws, is the best choice for a positive outcome, in my opinion. It will promote the success and well-being of each student and adult. I believe that it will help to educate teachers involved in copying and accepting the copies. It also serves as an opportunity to reflect on school policy and update or implement policies to make at St. Regis School. It is evident that my choice will ultimately enable the students of St. Regis to be better prepared for college, careers, and life. If we promote the proper ways to purchase software, we promote students using the proper pathways and tools to educate themselves and achieve success in whichever path they choose to travel. My choice will help to promote a collaborative effort among key stakeholders. Before this altercation, it seemed as if the PTA and the teachers were not working towards the common goal of making St. Regis successful. It is my intent to unite all stakeholders for a positive school culture. My choice will help to support every student and adult's learning and development. I will provide opportunity to educate the entire school community of St. Regis on copyright and how to work hard to make ourselves successful. It is my goal to inspire our staff to create new approaches to making what we have work for the betterment of our students. We must challenge ourselves to utilize what we have and what we have acquired properly to promote student learning. I will say that the school community is passionate about educating students, but it is my intent to channel that passion to do things the right way. I would like to create challenging and supportive conditions conducive to each student's learning. I would like to also channel the passion that the school community has into giving our students the best education that we can offer at St. Regis. My choice will help create positive work conditions for teachers. If I have clear policies that everyone is expected to follow, it will not be the burden of any teacher to ensure that they are being followed. My choice will help to allocate resources and help create opportunities to raise the funds to resource the computers of our students. My choice will ensure that policies and systems are constructed to make all teachers successful at St. Regis School. My choice will also help promote deep, meaningful work outside the classroom for teachers. I will help facilitate the PTA and their ideas to bring more funding into the school. It is also a goal to implement policy that all purchased software be installed on school-issued computers by a technology expert to ensure copyright is followed in the future. This issue has allowed me to reflect on past experiences to make sure that these issues do not happen again. Some questions that were provided for this case study. How can principals balance support from parents with interference with school operations? As a principal, it is important to build relationships with parents, and in the case of this case study, the PTA. I would make it a point to attend PTA meetings and keep the lines of communication open to help make the organization successful and meet the needs of our students. What school policies need to be developed to prevent this situation in the future? A policy that implements guidelines for following copyright needs to be implemented district-wide. Clear processes need to be outlined for copyright violations. So if I violate copyright, what happens, so on and so forth down the road. Training on copyright needs to be at a very minimum a yearly occurrence, if not bi-yearly for all staff. More questions answered. Did I analyze how law and policy are applied consistently, fairly, equitably, and ethically within the school? I analyzed the law and policy as it pertains to copyright for this case study. I was able to apply my knowledge of copyright laws and how to ultimately make the teachers at for St. Regis successful, given the circumstances at hand. How would you communicate policies, laws, regulations, and procedures to appropriate school stakeholders related to this case study? I believe that keeping the lines of communication about the copyright violations is important to all stakeholders involved in this situation. Informing all parties about what happened, what is going to happen, and what needs to change for the future is important for the success at St. Regis. How would I monitor and ensure adherence to laws and policies? Policies will be implemented as to how to acquire new software programs for school use. Prior approval will also be needed before installing new software onto school devices. What are some key strategies for involving community members in school planning? Some strategies include providing opportunities to educate community members, informing them of policies in place about purchasing software and installing it, and communicating school policies with organizations so that they can follow them. I think that's not been done here, and that needs to continue to happen in the future. In what ways do current laws, regulations, policies, and procedures impact meeting various needs? There is a financial burden for small school districts when it comes to meeting the needs of students. It is every school community member's intent to do what is best for students, but we must follow laws and policies to protect our school from fines and protect our teachers and their jobs and their careers. How would you use technology to improve the quality and efficiency of operations and management, acquire equipment and technology, and monitor its maintenance and appropriate use? In the future, I plan to implement a policy that states all purchased software programs need to be approved prior to purchase. Prior approval needs to be acquired before purchased programs are installed at all on computers. Develop a plan for acquisition and maintenance of equipment and technology. If the district has a technology professional, it would be their job and their job only to purchase and install new equipment and technology for teacher and student use. If the district does not have a technology professional, there would be a procedure for gaining permission to purchase and install new programs onto computers. Personally, here at Lebec County High School right now, we have a technology professional that's in charge of all of these things, that is very well equipped with current laws and policies on how to acquire technology. I would hope that in the future, St. Regis would be able to have the same thing. How would I implement an appropriate internet use policy and monitor compliance? It would be an immediate need to implement an internet use policy if that's not already in place for the students and staff at St. Regis. It would be my responsibility to monitor teachers' compliance of policies by utilizing programs. Currently, here we use GoGuardian to ensure students and staff are abiding by our acceptable use policy. That's just one example, but I think GoGuardian is a great program to ensure that all technology is used properly as far as the internet goes. My reflection: this case study gave me an opportunity to grow as a future building leader. This case is very easy to relate to. I have background teaching in a small town community where funding is hard to come by. It is important that I take the time to implement policies in the future to ensure that all teachers in my building and students alike are successful. It is necessary that I learn how to improve communication with all stakeholders and teachers so that policies and laws are not violated. Thank you and have a really good day.